Среда, 23 апреля 1958 года.
What if a man really vanished in front of 40 people and reappeared 2 years later without aging a day? Sergey Ponomarenko stood on a Kiev street in 1958, whispered strange equations, then disappeared in a blinding flash.
Сергей Пономаренко числится пропавшим без вести. И обратите внимание на дату.
When he returned, he held photographs of the future: skyscrapers, silent cars, digital screens. The film? Authentic. The timestamp? 2006.
Сережа, вот здесь лежат фотографии. Они отпечатаны с пленки из вашего фотоаппарата.
So, was it all a trick? Or did Sergey unlock a fold in time itself? The truth will leave you questioning everything. The obsession. It was October of 1958. Inside a crowded cafe in Kyiv, Sergey stood at a table surrounded by friends. He was holding up his camera like it was the most important invention in human history. His voice trembled with excitement as he told them, "I have figured it out. Time travel is real, and I can prove it." At first they laughed. They thought it was another one of his wild theories, but Sergey wasn't joking. For 6 months, he had been consumed by an idea he could not let go of. His apartment was covered wall to wall with notebooks and chalkboard equations that even he struggled to understand. He had spent endless nights studying how light behaves and how a photograph can freeze not just an image, but a moment in time. He believed that light carried more than color and shadow. It carried time itself. Sergey became convinced that if he could manipulate that light at the exact instant it was captured, he could move through the moment it represented. He could step into the photograph. Even the people closest to him began to worry. His fiancée, Valentina, tried to pull him back to reality. She would quietly beg him to stop, telling him that people were starting to talk. But Sergey ignored her. He told anyone who would listen that he had made a revolutionary discovery. He insisted that the world was about to witness proof that time travel was real. At dinner with friends one evening, he declared, "I do not need you to believe me. I will prove it. I will take a photograph at a specific time and place, and I will jump forward. I will see the future with my own eyes, and then I will come back to show you the evidence." His friend Ivan tried to reason with him, saying gently that he was only a photographer, not a scientist. Time travel, Ivan said, was just fantasy. But Sergey's eyes burned with determination. He told them he was a scientist, that he had spent months calculating angles, light, and electromagnetic fields. He had modified his camera with copper wire and magnetic plates, and had determined the exact position where sunlight would align perfectly with his lens. Valentina was terrified. "What if something goes wrong?" she asked. Sergey smiled and took her hand. "Nothing will go wrong," he said softly. "I will only be gone for a few seconds. I will jump forward, take photographs of the future, and then I will come right back. You will see. Everyone will see." To most people in 1958, Sergey's ideas sounded like madness, the fantasies of a dreamer lost in equations and light. But what if he wasn't entirely wrong? Decades later, Einstein's theory of relativity would show that time isn't fixed, that it bends and stretches depending on speed and gravity. In theory, light could be the key. If light carries information across time, then capturing and manipulating it might open a doorway not to another world, but to another moment. And on one quiet October morning, Sergey Ponomarenko would try to prove it. Disappearance. The experiment and its consequences. The date of the experiment was set for October 23, 1958. Sergey told his friends, his family, and his neighbors that on this day he would make history. He would prove that time travel was not only possible, it was real. That morning, Valentina begged him not to go through with it. Her voice trembled as she said, "What if you cannot come back? What if I lose you?" Sergey kissed her forehead and smiled. "You will not lose me," he said. "I have calculated everything. I will be back before you even have time to worry." They walked together to a quiet street corner Sergey had chosen after weeks of measuring magnetic readings. He claimed that spot was a weak point in time, a location where the past and the future briefly touched. By late morning, a small crowd had gathered. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers came to see the eccentric photographer who said he could travel through time. Some came hoping to see a miracle. Most came expecting him to fail. Sergey set up his strange-looking camera on a tripod. Its lens was wrapped in copper wire, small magnets were fixed to its frame, and strange painted symbols covered its body. He said these markings would help channel the energy of time itself. He looked up at the crowd and announced with complete confidence, "Ladies and gentlemen, Today, you will witness history. I will prove that time travel is not a dream, but a reality. Valentina stood nearby, her hands trembling. Sergey adjusted the focus of his camera, then turned to her. "I want you in the photograph with me," he said. "When I return, I want to have this moment of us captured forever." Valentina stepped beside Sergey, forcing a small smile, though her heart was pounding. The crowd around them had grown quiet. Ivan, their friend, stood a few feet away, ready to press the shutter on Sergey's command. Sergey had explained that the timing had to be exact. The sunlight needed to hit the camera's lens at the perfect angle, precisely at 10:47 in the morning. The crowd watched with a mix of skepticism and amusement. Someone whispered, "This is ridiculous." Another person laughed softly. Sergey ignored them. His hand tightened around Valentina's. His eyes were closed, his lips moving silently as he murmured calculations and strange words under his breath. Then, suddenly, his voice rang out. "Now!" he shouted. Ivan pressed the shutter. A brilliant flash of light filled the air. When the glare faded, Sergey Ponomarenko was gone. One heartbeat earlier, Valentina had been holding his hand. The next, she was grasping at nothing, staring in disbelief at the empty space where he had stood. Her scream cut through the stunned silence. The crowd erupted. Some people rushed forward, waving their hands through the air as if he might still be there, invisible. Others stumbled back in fear, crossing themselves and whispering prayers, convinced they had just witnessed something unnatural. Valentina kept calling his name, her voice breaking. "Sergey! Sergey!" But he did not answer. He was gone. Ivan stood motionless, the camera trigger cord still in his hand, his face drained of color. "I did nothing," he stammered. "I just pressed the button." Within minutes, the police arrived. Officers surrounded the area, questioning every witness. They searched nearby alleys, basements, rooftops, and every hidden corner, convinced there must be a trick. But there was no trick. Sergey Ponomarenko, the Ukrainian man who claimed he could time travel, had vanished in front of 40 witnesses. The story spread through Kiev like wildfire. Within days, newspapers across the Soviet Union carried the headline, "Photographer vanishes while attempting time travel." Some reporters mocked him as a delusional dreamer. Others wondered if the impossible had truly happened. Valentina refused to believe he was dead. "He said he would come back," she told anyone who would listen. "He promised me he would return with proof." The police listed Sergey as a missing person. Officer Dmitry, assigned to the investigation, interviewed Valentina repeatedly. "Did your fiancé have enemies?" he asked. "Anyone who might have wanted to harm him?" Valentina shook her head. "No. Sergey was harmless, obsessed, yes, but never dangerous. He just wanted to prove that time travel was real." Dmitry hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you believe he actually traveled through time?" Valentina met his eyes. "I was holding his hand," she said. "One moment he was right beside me, solid and real. The next, he was gone. Not hiding, not running away. Gone. So yes, I believe him." Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The story faded from the papers. Life in Kyiv moved on, but Valentina did not. She kept Sergey's apartment exactly as he had left it. His modified cameras sat on the shelves, collecting dust. His notebooks filled with equations and sketches remained stacked on his desk, and every day, at the same hour, he vanished. Valentina returned to that quiet street corner. She stood there, waiting for him, just in case today was the day he would keep his promise. People whispered that she had lost her mind. Her family begged her to move on, to accept that Sergey was gone forever, but she refused. "He told the truth," she would say softly. "Everyone laughed at him, but I saw it happen with my own eyes. If he was right about disappearing, then he will be right about coming back." To most, Sergey's disappearance was madness. But what if it was proof? In physics, the line between reality and theory is thinner than we think. When energy bends light, it bends time itself, stretching seconds into centuries. Perhaps Sergey's camera didn't destroy him at all. Perhaps for him, the flash was only the beginning. And as Kyiv mourned, somewhere in the fabric of time, Sergey Ponomarenko was already walking into the future. Return and revelation. 2 years passed. 2 long, aching years of waiting, hoping, and refusing to give up. Every morning at 10:47, Valentina stood at the same street corner where Sergey had disappeared. Rain or snow, she was always there, whispering the same quiet prayer. Then, on October 23, 1960, Exactly 2 years to the day after Sergey vanished, something truly impossible happened. That morning felt no different from the others. The streets of Kyiv were calm, and the city moved around her like any other day. Valentina stood on the sidewalk, eyes closed, her hand resting gently at her side. She whispered, "If you can hear me, come back." And then she felt it. A touch, warm, solid, familiar. A hand closed tightly around hers. Her eyes flew open. Standing right beside her was Sergey Ponomarenko. He looked exactly as he had on the day he disappeared. The same brown suit, the same camera hanging from his neck, the same bewildered expression on his face. He was breathing hard, eyes wide as he turned in slow circles, staring at the city around him. "Valentina," he gasped. "What happened? Why do you look different?" Tears blurred her vision. She could barely speak. "Sergey," she whispered, "you have been gone for 2 years." His face drained of color. 2 years? No, that cannot be. I was only gone for a few hours. He lifted his wrist to check his watch. The hands had barely moved. "I jumped forward," he said, trembling. "I saw things. I took photographs. And then I came back." How could 2 years have passed? People nearby stopped and stared. Many recognized Valentina immediately. For 2 years they had watched her stand at that corner, waiting for a man everyone said would never return. Now, before their eyes, he was back. Someone shouted, "Call the police! The photographer is back." Within minutes, the street filled with murmurs and disbelief. Officer Dmitry arrived less than half an hour later, hardly believing what he had heard over the radio. But when he reached the scene, there was no mistake. Standing in front of him was Sergey Ponomarenko, alive, unchanged, exactly as he had looked the day he vanished. "Sergey Ponomarenko?" Dmitry asked quietly, still unsure if his eyes were deceiving him. "Yes," Sergey replied, his voice shaking. "I do not understand what is happening. I was only gone for a few hours. How can 2 years have passed?" Dmitry took a breath and said, "You need to come with us to the station. We have many questions." Sergey nodded, clutching his camera tightly against his chest, as though it were the only thing keeping him connected to reality. Modern physics teaches us that time doesn't flow the same for everyone. Einstein's theory of relativity revealed that time stretches and bends depending on how fast we move and how close we are to powerful gravitational forces. In other words, time isn't fixed. It can dilate, it can slip, it can fracture. For Sergey, those few hours he experienced might have been 2 years for everyone else. To him, it was a moment's journey. To the world, it was a miracle. And yet, the question remained, where had he gone? Reflection and mystery. At the police station, Sergey sat in a small interrogation room, his hands still gripping the camera as if it were a lifeline. Valentina sat beside him, refusing to let go of his hand, terrified that if she did, he might vanish once again. Across the table, Officer Dmitry opened his notebook. His face was calm, but his eyes revealed quiet disbelief. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. Sergey took a shaky breath. "I did it," he whispered. "I actually did it. Time travel is real, and I proved it." Dmitry's pen hesitated over the paper, but he said nothing. He only nodded for Sergey to continue. "When the flash went off, everything turned white," Sergey said. "I felt myself being pulled forward, as if I were caught in a strong current. It only lasted a few seconds. Then suddenly, I was standing in the same place, but everything around me was different." Dmitry leaned forward. "Different how?" "The buildings were taller," Sergey said. "The cars looked strange, smooth and silent, moving without any sound or smoke. People were dressed in materials I had never seen before, and everyone was carrying small devices, talking into them like telephones, but there were no wires." Valentina's grip on his hand tightened. "I walked for what felt like hours," Sergey continued. "I was terrified. Nothing made sense. I tried asking people what year it was, but they looked at me as if I were insane. Finally, one man stopped and answered me. He told me the year was 2006. Dmitry froze, his pen trembling slightly. "You are saying you traveled forward 48 years?" "Yes," Sergey said. "Exactly 48 years. I traveled to 2006, just like I claimed I could." Despite the fear in his voice, his eyes shone with excitement. "Do you understand what this means?" I was right. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I was right. Dmitri asked quietly, "How did you get back?" "I went back to the same place where I had arrived," Sergey replied. "The same street corner." I thought about Valentina, about this moment, about October 23rd, 1958. I focused on it as hard as I could and pressed the shutter again. He tapped the camera hanging from his neck. The white light came back, the same pulling feeling, and then I was here. But Valentina looked older. "You said 2 years have passed. I do not understand." Dmitri sighed. "Time moved normally for everyone else. You disappeared in 1958. Today is 1960. For the rest of us, 2 years have gone by, but for you, it was only a few hours." Sergey's face crumpled. "I did not mean to be gone for that long. I promised her I would be back in seconds. I thought I could control it." Dmitri looked at him steadily. "Do you have any proof?" Sergey's expression brightened. "Yes, the camera. The film is still inside. Please, develop it. You will see I am telling the truth." He removed the camera carefully and handed it over. Dmitri took it to one of the best film developers in Kyiv, swearing him to secrecy. 3 hours later, the developer returned, his hands shaking. "I do not know how to explain this," he said, his voice trembling. "These images, they are impossible." Dmitri spread the photographs across his desk as Sergey and Valentina leaned in to see. The first few photographs showed exactly what they expected, the street corner in 1958. Valentina stood smiling in her blue dress, the buildings behind her still the old Soviet brick and stone. But the next photograph changed everything. The same location appeared again, only now it was transformed. Tall glass and steel towers reached toward the sky. Strange vehicles filled the streets, unlike any cars from their time. People in modern, colorful clothing hurried past enormous screens mounted on buildings, displaying moving images. "This is the same corner," Sergey said, pointing to the landmarks. "Look at that building in the background. It is the same one, but everything else has changed. It is decades in the future." One photograph showed Sergey's reflection in a shop window. Behind him stretched the impossible cityscape of the future. A digital sign in the background clearly displayed the date, 2006. For a long moment, no one spoke. Dmitri stared at the photographs, his mind racing. He had been a police officer for 15 years. He had seen forgeries, staged tricks, and every kind of fraud, but this was different. The film stock was genuine from the 1950s. The developing process was ordinary, standard. There were no signs of editing, no traces of double exposure, and no manipulation of any kind. Finally, he whispered, "How is this possible?" Sergey sat back in his chair, exhausted. "I told everyone I could do it," he said quietly. "I spent 6 months preparing, studying electromagnetic fields, modifying my camera, and calculating the perfect conditions. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I was right." Tears welled in Valentina's eyes as Sergey turned to her. "I am sorry," he said. "I am sorry I was gone for 2 years." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You came back," she said softly. "That is all that matters. You kept your promise." Sergey's story raised a question that still haunts scientists today. If time truly bends, could light itself become a bridge between moments? Some physicists suggest that under the right electromagnetic conditions, a burst of energy like the one from Sergey's modified camera might warp spacetime just enough to slip between seconds. To us, that would look like vanishing. To the traveler, it might feel like stepping through light itself. Perhaps Sergey hadn't defied time. Perhaps he had simply found the crack where time folds in on itself. And if that's true, then he may not have been the first. Echoes through time. News of Sergey's return spread even faster than the story of his disappearance. Within days, his name was on every front page across the Soviet Union. Scientists wanted to study him. Government officials demanded to question him. Everyone wanted to know how the Ukrainian man who claimed he could travel through time had actually done it. But Sergey refused most requests. He was deeply shaken by what had happened. The thought of being separated from Valentina for 2 long years, even though it had felt like only hours to him, haunted him constantly. He would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, terrified that at any moment he might vanish again. "I proved I was right," he told Officer Dmitri during one of their final conversations. "But the cost was too high. I lost 2 years with Valentina. In 2 years, I will never get back. I do not want to do it again." Dmitri studied him carefully. "Can you do it again?" he asked. "Can you control it?" Sergey shook his head. "I do not know. I thought I understood how it worked, but clearly I did not. I believed I could control where and when I went, but I was wrong. It took me to the year 2006, and I had no say in it. What if next time it takes me even further? What if next time I cannot come back? Government scientists were disappointed when they realized he could not replicate his experiment. They wanted him to try again, under controlled supervision, with equipment and funding, but Sergey refused. "I am not a tool," he said firmly. "I am a human being. I am not risking my life again just to satisfy curiosity." Sergey and Valentina were finally allowed to return to their lives, though life would never truly return to normal. A few months later, they were married. They had children. Sergey returned to photography, capturing weddings, families, and cityscapes. But he never again modified his camera. He never again spoke of time travel. His notebooks filled with equations were placed in a box and hidden in the attic. The strange camera that had changed everything was locked away in a safe, never to be used again. Over the years, theories began to circulate. Some scientists claimed Sergey had stumbled upon a natural tear in time, a temporal anomaly that just happened to occur at the perfect moment. Others believed his modifications had somehow triggered a localized distortion in space and time, but no one could ever prove it. The science of time travel. For centuries, humanity has dreamed of bending time by stepping beyond the limits of past, present, and future. But could Sergey Ponomarenko have actually done it? Modern physics does not dismiss the idea entirely. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity tells us that time is not a fixed constant. It stretches and compresses depending on how fast we move and how close we are to strong gravitational forces. In other words, time itself can be manipulated, at least in theory. In the early 21st century, the renowned physicist Stephen Hawking once said, "Time travel is theoretically possible, but not yet practical." He explained that under the right conditions near black holes, at extreme speeds, or with enough energy to bend space-time, time dilation could allow a person to move forward faster than the world around them. What would feel like hours to a traveler could be years to everyone else. Sound familiar? That is exactly what happened to Sergey. His story mirrors the principles of relativity itself. When he pressed the shutter and vanished, only a few hours passed for him, yet 2 years slipped by in our world. It is as if his experiment somehow pulled him through a microscopic fold in time, a temporary wormhole that bridged 2 moments in history. Science fiction has explored this concept for decades. In Ant-Man, for example, the quantum realm is portrayed as a place where the laws of space and time break down, allowing a person to move between realities or experience time differently. In Interstellar, astronauts traveling near a black hole return to find that decades have passed on Earth, even though for them only a few hours had gone by. Perhaps Sergey's camera, with its strange magnetic coils and copper wiring, acted as a crude bridge into a similar dimension, a point where light, energy, and gravity intersected just enough to distort time itself. Even today, scientists studying quantum mechanics admit that reality behaves in ways we barely understand. Particles can exist in 2 places at once. Events can appear to happen before their causes. And in those strange, invisible moments between what is and what could be, time might not be as stable as we think. So was Sergey's invention a lucky accident, a natural anomaly, or a glimpse into a truth we are not ready to face? No one knows. But if Einstein and Hawking were right, and so, the story of Sergey Ponomarenko remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern history. The tale of a man who vanished before 40 witnesses, returned 2 years later unchanged, and carried with him photographs that science still cannot explain. Even now, decades later, people still ask the same question. Was Sergey truly a time traveler, or simply a man who captured something beyond our understanding, a glimpse into the unknown? So what do you think? Did Sergey Ponomarenko truly travel through time, or did he stumble upon something science simply cannot explain yet? If you had the chance to step through time just once to any year in the past or the future and capture a single photograph as proof, what moment would you choose to witness? Would you go back to see ancient civilizations rise, or travel forward to see what humanity becomes? Share your answer in the comments, because your imagination might just be the next step toward unlocking the mysteries of time itself. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, subscribe for more mind-bending mysteries, and remember, sometimes the truth isn't in the future or the past, it's hidden right here, in the present, waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.